This is Mortgage Pros 411. I'm Audrey Boissonou with Kevin Casey, and today we are joined by, I don't know, let's just call it one of my favorites, Mark McArdele. Stop looking so bored, Mark. You can't hold your head up without your hand. Come on, what's up?
It's the Tuesday after Labor Day. I'm the only guest she could find at the last minute, so that's what you got.
Okay, so first of
Well,
all,
everyone still thinks it's Monday, so they're probably not even, no one's going to show today.
yeah, well, first of all, I will say that number one, as soon as Kevin sent out the flyer, my God, I was blown away at the number of people who are like ping, 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 like, making sure they're signed up. So that's not the case. And just in case you remember last week when we said that Jim Neighbors with NAM was going to be here, and
I'm
as
not
you
your
can see,
neighbors.
it is not Jim Neighbors. Again, thank you to Mark. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being willing to step in at the last minute because Jim Neighbors was called to Washington, D.C. And
Is he going for a bill signing?
He gets a
one can
pen.
hope. One can hope.
Mm.
So, yeah, with all that being said, okay, that's one. That's the one time, Mark, I had to listen to an episode not too long ago, and I realized I said that too many times, and I actually have a note to myself, don't say it anymore, and poof, so slipped out of my mouth. So, trigger leads. Trigger leads finally did get to the White House,
Oh, they
and
did.
we know,
Did
yes.
they? Wait. How did they
It-
get delivered? Was it like a slow boat around the world,
yeah,
kind of
is it
on
and
its
is it signed
way?
yet? I haven't heard about signing.
Okay, so first of all, it is likely it took a slow boat around the world because it did take seemingly forever for it to get from the last vote in Congress to the White House. Once it's at the White House, there's 10 days allowed for the president to sign or veto. I believe that time is up sometime Thursday. There has been no indication he isn't going to sign, and maybe he will. So we will let you know what happens with that, but cross your fingers. Although, if I may, I'm hearing a lot of people who are talking about the idea that maybe it's just going to be business as usual. Because even though it will now be, what is it? You lose your license and it's a felony, right? If you call a trigger lead or buy trigger, anyway. But
And it's an opt in now, not an opt out, which is a sizable change. So
it is. It is a sizable change. But if you were to listen to the trigger lead, what I'm guessing are buyers out there, they they're talking about how they're going to work around this, get around it, and I'm like, oh my
Well, there's
God.
lots of ways around it. So first of all, think about as a loan officer, what are the triggers that cause your clients to call you? It's not when they pull credit report with some other loan officer. There's many triggers way before that, like a huge pay raise, a job promotion, a new baby is on the way, getting married. All these are triggers that cause people to think, hey, I need to buy a house.
So funny you say that because I part of that discussion that I've heard on more than one occasion involves something called life event triggers and
Yes,
how
that's
they're going to
exactly
work
it.
with them. So I'd
wait.
there's always going to be somebody who's trying to work the system. Just to before we get too deep into the weeds, just want to note that I don't know, the 10-year was vacillating between 4.27 and 4.28 this morning. And
That's
we
still good in my mind. I mean, people are, oh, it's up, but it's like it's still below 4.3, which is to me, that means it's time to lock.
well, compared to where it was, it certainly
Yeah.
is better, we will say. And again, back to our little ditty that we can never get tired of. Maybe if you're tired of it, you can let us know, but we'll probably still keep doing it anyway. If you see a rate you like, lock it in, right? Okay, so it is jobs weeks, kids. I mean, shouldn't we always have job week? Job weeks. It's just one job week, just singular. Job week. We should always have that after a 3-day weekend, right? So tomorrow we have JOLTS, job openings, labor turnover. We'll see how that goes. Multiple job counting for the same job, perhaps different titles, different states. We never know whether it's real or not. ADP is on Thursday with jobless claims. And then Friday, we have my favorite, as always, BLS. They are expecting 75,000 job creations and the unemployment rate to tick up to 4.3%.
First
Mark?
job report under the new BLS director, so that'll be a key thing to watch. People will be
Yeah.
very paying
Are they going to
attention.
make up numbers more or less?
Well,
I was told it was next to impossible to make up numbers before, so we'll see if it exceeds expectations greatly. There'll be a lot of attention paid.
so Mark Zandy, so we just heard that, the current job estimate for creations is 75,000. Mark Zandy, who's the chief economist for Moody's, believes that the job creations will be more along the lines of 50,000. He agrees that the unemployment rate will go to 4.3%, but he's also talking about the downward revisions for June and July, and that it could turn it into job losses for those months.
Mm.
And that I've heard this idea that we could have negative job creations once the revisions are done for the last few months based on the small numbers that we were getting. What I'm very curious to understand, and I have absolutely no sense of what is going to happen with this, is we are going to have the new person, I forget his name, the whose name is in my head, Ennio Maragoni. I got it wrong. The guy who was like the father of film music, the Italian guy. Anyway, so for some reason his name is in my head instead of whoever the new head of BLS is. And so here's my question. So he was appointed to BLS because these job numbers were coming in too low. And that couldn't be right, and they had to be fabricated. So how is this guy going to do his job correctly and accurately and keep his job? Any ideas, people? I'm looking for answers
Those
here.
those
It,
numbers are important. I think investors all over the world take a look at them. So
well, yeah, to say they're important is putting it
Here's the other
mildly.
thing. If the job numbers go up, won't that mean that interest rates should be going up also?
you mean if if the job
Unemployment
growth is
goes
greater,
down
you will
and
see
more
probably higher
people,
mortgage rates, and
yeah.
if there was a subpar report, you'd see lower mortgage rates. That's often the way it tracks, but there's no
But
sure rule.
if he's ordered to get employment rate numbers or
Up.
employment higher, and he's ordering the Fed to get rates lower, that's counterintuitive because they go opposite.
Well, okay, so I also read this, and this was per Fed Governor Waller, that the BLS response rates 10 years ago, the response rate was 95%, which I think is interesting. The they're given 90 days to respond. I don't know why they're given 90 days. Why? I mean, especially 10 years ago, maybe you can understand it, but today, how do they not
Right.
have that data at their fingertips? Okay, so 10 years ago, the response rate in the first month was 75%, and then there was a 20% of the follow-up in the following 2 months. So I don't understand why they're given 3 months to respond. That's big. Now the total response rate is still 95%. Those are big numbers, but people
Wow.
are reporting later than they used to. So only 60% are reporting in the first month, 35% in the next 2 months. So I have so many questions. I can't get them answered. Why, Mark? Why?
I don't know if I have answers to those. I do think if they're getting 95%, that's an amazing number compared to like surveys generally, which are dropping off the cliff. You talk about a political survey they run, you're getting single digit response rates now. So if they're getting that high of a response rate, that's very impressive.
It is. And also, again, I'd like to know who gets chosen to fill out these surveys. Why is our federal monetary policy dependent on
Maybe
a
I have
survey?
a solution. We just have to start naming the people that aren't getting their surveys in fast enough.
I would think there's got to be some way to deal with this. So, and why hasn't anyone else thought maybe there's a problem here? I mean, besides us, I know that, me and a few people on this call have thought perhaps we have an issue, but I'm baffled by the whole situation. And I just don't understand how we're going to move through it when now we don't know which numbers are real, which numbers are not real, who's political, who's not political. Oh, it's exhausting.
It is exhausting.
Okay, so why are bonds off a little bit today? Well, that might be because an appeals court decided that the IEEPA, there's another acronym for the group, the 1977 Act, International Emergency Economics Powers Act, that was used to impose all these tariffs that we have been, dealing with in the market, et cetera, for months, it has been deemed illegal. So now it's going to be sent to probably the Supreme Court, right? It's going to an appeals court. It could mean that tariffs were illegal and that they have to be repaid. And so the markets are not happy about the idea of this. And the court said very clearly that the act does not give the president the right to impose tariffs. Only Congress has that power. So
So I have a solution. Why doesn't Congress just pass the tariff rule?
well, and
I
it
would,
may come to that, Mark.
Isn't that their
I was just,
job?
well, I mean, if you think of a tariff, it is a tax. It should be Congress that does it. I mean,
Uh-huh.
the emergency tariffs are for, I think, unique situations where all of a sudden you see some country dumping stuff onto our market, and then you can do an emergency thing. But then you should follow up with Congress and say, I would
Mhm.
like to raise the rate permanently on country X. Congress should have that power, and it's disturbing that they yielded it because then you'd have more stability. I think all of us would prefer stability. If the tariff rate's going to be 10%, fine. But let's pass a law, say 10%, and then you have to go through another process if you want to change it, not whatever he had for coffee this morning.
Right. So it was noted in the chat that the president has 30 days to ask Congress to say yes to the tariffs. I don't know that that happened. Do you know that that happened?
I
Well,
don't
they have
know.
to get back from vacation, don't they?
That's, yeah,
They're
right.
back. Today is their first day back.
Okay. So back to Christopher Waller, our Fed governor. He thinks that after the revisions that we'll have job losses. Also, in addition to Mark Zandi, he also thinks that the neutral rate for the Fed right now should be 3%, and we are at 4 3/8 ish. And
Who
so,
thinks this?
pardon me,
Who thinks this?
Waller.
Waller. So he's been a big proponent of a cut of the Fed funds rate. He voted for that at the last meeting. Our next meeting with the Fed is September 17th, or the next decision. So did I just say September? I hope I said September. I thought I
You
said.
did.
Okay, great. All right. So it's all very interesting. He, by the way, is saying let's just do a quarter. He's not suggesting we should do any catch up, which, I would just like to revisit last September when we had the rate cut priced into the market going into that Fed meeting. They cut 3/4. Mortgage rates went through the roof for I don't even know how long, and it was not fun. So for everyone wishing for rate cuts, I'm like, "Ugh, cross your fingers and say a prayer." We have NMLS classes coming up that are live, 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 live. You can get in, you can knock it out and be done in one day. And
Yep.
it's fun. I mean,
You learned something.
you might actually learn something. You might actually get to talk to other humans. Typically, there's some sort of lunch that is provided, and you don't have to worry about the NMLS people reviewing video of an online class in 3 months or whenever they decide to do this, and ascertain at that point that they wanted to see 6 more inches of your torso, and now your class that you thought you were done with doesn't count. That actually happened to someone last year. So, we have been sending out an email that shows where all these classes are across the state of California. If you'd like them in other places, we're more than happy to put those together. But check out your email and make sure you get your NMLS taken care of now. Okay, so we all need a little bit of sunshine. You ready? This is my little bit of sunshine for the moment. The housing market has been up 77 out of the last 83 years. How about
77 out of 83.
Yeah, 77 out of 83 years, the housing market has been up.
But how much did it go down in those?
It doesn't matter. If you look at, actually, I printed this. There, if you look at the increases in the markets in certain, places, I mean, over the last 10 years, never mind 83 years, but 10 years. New York, 85%, Chicago, 68%, Las Vegas, 112%. Don't ask me why. No offense, Las Vegas. Tampa, 121%. And by the way, we're seeing corrections in places like Tampa, but when you see increases at 121%, that could explain some of it. So there is often a little adjustment once you've had some crazy increase like that. San Francisco, 65%. So again, housing is a good investment. It
Mhm.
is stable. It is and by the way, it's a place to live. I mean, don't lose sight of that. We have lost sight of that in so many ways, right?
Think how much you'd be paying in rent.
I know.
That's crazy amounts.
I had somebody who was angsting over how much it was going to cost to own a house, and I did the math on how much she had paid in rent in the last 10 years. She almost had a heart attack and then bought a place. So
Yeah.
I think
Mark, I had a client who just and when I did the math, her mortgage payments were less than her current rent.
yep. And that's in the Bay Area. That is not, in Lake County, which is much, much less expensive. That's in a place that is not inexpensive. So it is really, really important that we do math for our clients and make sure that we go through those numbers for them. Because again, the call centers are not doing that, that's for sure. And we are going to be able to have strategies and out of the box thinking and programs. And we're going to know something about them that a computer system is not going to know, a call center is not going to know. So make sure that we are going the extra mile and we're doing the math and spending some time with our clients to make sure they're getting what they need to have, what's good for them. Mark, you look like you're concentrating and you're disturbed by something. What's up?
No, it's just taking a look at the Case-Shiller index, which just supported what you were saying. It's gone up over time, despite the dips of 2009, 8 and 9. But like you said, it's not primarily an investment. It's primarily a place to live.
Supposed to be, but somehow we have lost track of that and we are so focused on, this idea that you're going to have the lowest rates, the lowest prices, which those two things almost never correlate. So if you've got prices that are going down, you're going to have rates that are high. Anyway, it's all contrary to each other. All right, let's talk about PCE a little bit. So we had our PCE report for July last week, and it basically came in as expected. Core PCE is up to 2.9%, and we know that the Fed would like it to be closer to 2%, but there was barely a difference. The decimals and rounding is what took us to 2.9% from 2.8%. So could be worse. And also just to note that in February, the 3-month run rate was 4.1%. We're at 2.94 right now. And for 6 months, maybe I have those backwards. In February, it was 3.4% and 2.95 is where we are today. So we're better. We have been getting better. And it sounded from listening to Jerome Powell at the Jackson Hole and for the last couple of Fed meeting statements that they are comfortable with the direction that inflation seems to be going. So cross your fingers and hang on to that. Yeah,
But if I cross my fingers, it's hard to hang on.
that's true. In other news, apartment list,
It makes it hard.
apartment list says that new rents are down 0.2 month over month, down 0.9 year over year. So again, some of the inflation reports are not reflecting the rents properly, not a surprise. So in Chrisman today, or I don't know if it was today, sometime, and we are part of the Chrisman commentary group. He mentioned, are you ready for this, kids? 6 million delinquent student loans. They're going to start garnishing wages in October. Why should we care? Well, apparently 35 to 40% of all Ginnie Mae loan borrowers have student loans. And the HUD guidelines say no modifications if you're delinquent on your student loans. So this could be
Wait, no modification on your mortgage?
correct. If you wanted a modification on your mortgage and you have delinquent student loans, student loans, they won't do it.
Those are the same people. The same people who are delinquent on their student loans are probably the same people that want a modification.
Okay, didn't I?
Because the people who are not delinquent don't need a modification because they're paying their bills on time and they're just fine.
So
But
I
if
now
think the
that we
bigger impact
can't
would be
pay
on
your
people
bills,
qualifying for a mortgage, right?
yeah.
Well, I mean, so you're going to have an, so here's the thing. We know that most of a big chunk of the delinquencies in the last few months in the mortgage space have been those Ginnie loans, both
FHA.
FHA and VA. So we know there are some issues. We also know that the people who put down the least amount in the last few years are the people who are kind of
Yeah.
struggling right now, especially if they, I mean, let's say they did a buy down and they were told you're going to be able to refinance next year, and now it's 2 or 3 years later and the rate is not lower, it's going to go higher. And now what, right? So, and they don't have the equity position that a lot of other folks have. So, what do we do with
When when we were at the bureau, that was something we looked at. Anybody who advertised, get, buy down your rate, you can refi later, because that they obviously can't commit to that.
Well,
Mark?
you can't promote that?
You can't say you can just
What?
refi later. We thought that was borderline deceptive. Yeah.
That
So,
wasn't
and
borderline. That was deceptive.
yeah, well, there were tons of ads that did that,
I saw them
especially,
all the
yeah.
time. I'm like, why are you saying that? You have no way of knowing that. And
That's
sure
right.
enough, it never happened, you know?
The
Sure
good news
enough.
is the buy down, you qualify under the buy down, right? So it's not
Yeah.
like it used to be, but it is still putting added stress to the consumer.
Hmm.
It is definitely putting added stress to the consumer. And so my thought is we should really be looking at these FHA loans and seeing if we can help some of these borrowers. Maybe it makes sense to do, I mean, maybe their rate is higher. Maybe they got in and when it was 7.25% or 7%, and now they're at 6.5% or 6.25%. Maybe they do have enough equity. Maybe they can consolidate some of those loans so that their overall payments are lower. Just remember that the cash out refinances that have been done in recent history, on average, the interest rate has gone up 1.5% for those people. They're understanding that it doesn't make sense to keep all the equity in your house when you're drowning in a bunch of payments. And if you can improve your position, maybe that is the way to go, right?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
a lot of people are coming for second loans right now. I'm getting a lot of requests for equity lines and such. And I do the math, and sometimes it makes sense for them to consolidate the two loans together because they've got all
Yeah.
this other debt. And it's like, wait, what are you doing this for? You could just do this and do this. And like, oh, wait, I'll save more money that way. Other times it makes sense to take out just $100,000 and do whatever they need to do and leave the first loan as it is, and it's just fine.
It's again, it's math. It's math along with what is your plan? What, and what are your spending habits in the past? How many times, did you come to me a year ago and want 100 grand and now you want 150? Did
Mhm.
that just happen? Because that
Yep.
could be a sign that they're not managing things correctly. Maybe. And maybe they would be better in a 30-year fixed rate
We
first.
all know we have clients who will always spend more money than they have, and they will always do it again and again.
Exactly.
I've always been a fan of cash flow underwriting because you can get a sort of a picture of how people sort of spend their money over time, and two people at the same DTI could be two very different consumers.
Completely.
Exactly. It was one of the suggestions we made actually, and it really harkens back to VA loans where you look at residual
Yeah, they have
income.
residual income.
When they were talking about trying to make the max DTI 40%, you're going to have,
Crazy.
that was nuts. And again, there was no correlation between delinquencies and DTI at that point anyway. We still hear people talk about it, and it makes me wonder what else they don't seem to know, or what else they don't know. But there was never any traction with that, and I don't know why only VA has bought into this residual income idea, but
There's small innovations. The GSEs have a second look program that uses something like cash flow to qualify, but you're right, it should be way more common than it is. If you look at VA loans, they perform well over time. They actually have a perfect bell curve of DTI because the residual income plays more of a factor as you go up. FHA loans, they have this huge cliff at whatever the top is, 57 or something, but VA has a nice smooth distribution. I'm big believer in cash flow slash residual income, and it should have more usage on especially for self-employed borrowers, other borrowers.
well, and then I mean, I'd love for some of the regulators and the people who are making these laws and guidelines. I'd like them to be in the room when I'm trying to explain to my borrower who has $5 million in the bank why they don't qualify for an 8-paper Fannie Freddie loan with an LTV of 35%. Explain. I mean, it's just such nonsense. And, you know, other than saying, I told you before, don't expect logic in our business, there isn't a very good explanation for that. Yes, no, maybe.
I'm not looking for logic.
Yeah,
Exactly.
me
I
neither.
tell the clients all the time, you're being logical. Stop being logical. You're getting a mortgage.
Exactly. Exactly. So interestingly, even though all we hear from the ground is that the consumer is feeling pinched and their finances are strained and they're in trouble, consumer spending was up 0.3 in July. That's right.
And
Three
that's with gas
tenths.
prices down. That's impressive.
And 2% year over year. My gas prices, by the way, and I know I feel like we probably talk about my gas station and my gas prices way too much on this show. However, it is sort of front and center for me. Mark, I pay just under $5 a gallon right now. How much are you paying in your neck of the woods?
Closer to 3.
Yeah. So doesn't make me very happy. And so I don't think they're down. So consumer spending is up 2% year over year. And there's again a disconnect between what they're saying and what they're doing, right? Unless the 2% is coming from maybe they have cut back on things, but they're just paying higher prices. I don't know. So
That's why I was saying the gas prices, because when gas prices go up, I notice a correlation that consumer spending tends to go up with gas prices. And I've always argued, well, that's because they're spending more on gas, not because they're buying more things.
but
But gas prices going down and consumer spending going up, that's actually a good sign.
okay, so
Or other prices are going up, to her point, right? So, I mean, I go to the grocery store all the time. Things aren't great.
yeah. All right. So Mr. McArdle, just for
Mhm.
those who have forgotten, you in a previous life were the assistant director of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, also known as the CFPB.
Mhm.
Do you have any updates on what is going on at the CFPB right now?
So they are still in a state of limbo. They lost an appeal case to the DC Court of Appeals. There was the 3-judge ruling. So 2-1, they voted that the administration can fire, as you remember, everybody but 200 people was the proposal on the table. So that is still that was the last ruling. It'll probably be appealed. So the full, what they call the en banc court will take a look at that. That's majority Democratic appointees, so it very well may go in the Bureau's favor. I mean, the union's favor in this case. And then it'll go to the Supreme Court, where almost undoubtedly it'll go back and they will be allowed to fire everybody. This isn't I think a lost opportunity because there are a lot of good people at the Bureau who know everything about these rules. There are a lot of changes I think the industry wants to make, LO Comp, other places. You need people in their seats to be able to make these changes. You need folks talking to, industry and consumers and try to get the right thing. So I feel like we're wasting a lot of time trying to fire everybody when we could be focusing on what sort of regulatory changes need to be made at the Bureau to sort of facilitate common sense mortgage regulation going forward. And they do more than mortgages, as you know. But
But how many people would actually go back to work?
well, right now, the last report I heard is only 200 people, including people like me, have left. They lose about 5 people a week just getting new jobs. The majority are still there with this never-ending limbo. So that's something like 1,400 people, 1,500 people. The proposal is to fire all but 200. So that's 1,200 people who would lose their jobs. And like I said, many of them are not ideological. Many of them worked under Kathy Kraninger and Republicans pretty well. That's where we did the QM rule and other things. I think there is like common sense mortgage regulation. We all can agree Rohit Chopra was a little crazy, but like here's a chance to put out new rules and get things straight. But all the drama being spent on this is perhaps counterproductive, especially if it takes another year before there's stability. And then how many years? There's only 2 more years left in the administration.
Well, I thought, okay, this was funny to me, but not really funny. So Red Fort Finn is reporting, you ready for this? the housing costs could return to normal by 2030. That's in
I
5
saw
years,
that.
kids. If price growth stabilizes and rates go to 5.5%. And then they went on to say could return to 2018 levels, but it's not a prediction. And my note to the side of this was, what is this shit? I mean, like, what does that even mean? Why do they put this out there? So the consumer reads this in a blip, and then they're going to think, oh, yeah, well, first of all, their takeaway is going to be rates are going to go to 5.5. They're not going to see it's not a prediction. None of that is going to register. Rates are going to 5.5. And
So
all
now they're going to wait.
like what? I don't even understand the point of this. Anyone? Anyone?
Yeah, it's I mean, long-term interest rates, this is not that out of whack. If you look at other decades, the 90s, the 80s, 7% rates were the normal. You could afford a home. Actually, the 80s, they went much higher. But over time, the rate is somewhere north of 5%, not much. But there's too much focus on the rate. I think we do have a big problem in this country. It's focused on supply. We need more houses for sale. We have a lot of folks in their very, very low rates who perhaps need some sort of incentive to move, a tax credit or something as well that could really stimulate the market. But I don't hear those solutions being talked about. What I hear is like
Well,
building on federal lands in Montana or something, where I think most of the housing we need is right near the jobs because we all have to commute.
well,
Okay, so
I have a lot of federal land around me.
Well, you're lucky. I don't have any federal land near me, and my average home price in Montgomery County is something like $550,000.
okay.
Yeah,
So
but I don't really want them building on that federal land. It makes it
No, it would. I
beautiful.
think
It's
that's
like,
yeah.
Kevin, no one cares what we think. Come on, get over
yeah,
it.
yeah.
So just on that note, Scott Bessent yesterday, while everyone was having a
I saw
barbecue,
that.
he said that President Trump may declare an emergency, use his emergency powers to declare a housing emergency to address affordability. And some of the ideas that were floated were to simplify the permit process, to encourage standardization to boost construction, cutting closing costs, and tariff exemptions on construction materials. Now, a few of these things we could wrap our little brains around and be cool with. The idea, though, that you're going to like somehow boost construction when Newsbreak has now reported that 1.2 million immigrants are gone from the U.S. labor force under President Trump, and that 30% of our construction workers are immigrants. So,
And wait a minute. Oh, and the price of lumber has gone up because we've tariffed
but
Canada.
Kevin, they could exempt construction materials from tariffs. So I don't know whether this is allowable under this emergency power plan. Isn't that the same act that was used for the tariffs and is
They
now going
love
to
to use
be
emergency powers for everything, and a lot of this is local, right? So it's going to be very difficult to override zoning codes at the local level.
okay? So I would like to say that I think they should override some of the zoning codes and
I would
and
agree. California is actually trying to do their best there.
They're
So, I mean,
actually,
I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying emergency czar powers aren't probably going to happen, but we'll see.
well,
really,
is it
really
I
close
have
to home. In
what
San Francisco, they've really streamlined the permit process. Um, and yeah, it's kind of changing things. They're starting to
I
build.
have some clients in Marin who have gone through HE double toothpicks. That would be capital HE double toothpicks with their permit department at their little town. They're so crazy. And they've been trying to do the improvements to the homeowners association that are required under law. And to get back off of the naughty list for Fannie Mae, they have to do certain things. And it is a nightmare. Absolutely 100% a nightmare. So there should be some look at this whole idea of permits. And really, I mean, do we need everything to be permitted? Is that really important? That in Mark, my 2 weeks in the UK this summer uh made me think about this quite a bit because I'm watching them do some work to places that have been around for, I don't know, hundreds, some of them longer of years. I stayed in a tower that was completely great that has been in the same family for over 1,000 years, almost 1,000 years. So these were all done without permits. And I'm not suggesting we abandon permitting completely. I'm just saying that we've got properties around the world that have existed for hundreds and hundreds and lots of them longer of years with no issues. So obviously, I don't want a situation where like we see in some countries where there's fraud and bribery and there's no permitting and then you have buildings collapsing. There's got to be some happy medium between where we are today and nothing. So I would love a look at that.
Well,
I don't know.
we are in the happy medium. We're in between England, which is overregulated, and Afghanistan, where buildings fall down when there's an earthquake. So
There are jurisdictions that are making progress here. You know, Minneapolis got rid of single family zoning and allowed like up to 4 units being built anywhere in the city. You know, and you let the market decide where it makes sense. You know, there's not going to be apartment buildings everywhere. It makes sense to focus them where there are transit corridors and jobs. That's the kind of stuff we need. We need more housing where people can get to work.
It is, but also I do think there is something to the idea that we buy a house in an area and we don't expect that in 20 years, we're going to all of a sudden have density change to the point where you don't want to live there anymore.
But
So
you never ever guarantee that the
I know.
vacant lot across your house is going to be vacant forever. I mean, the fact is neighborhoods change, economics change. If you build in my area, if you have a house near a metro, you can assume that the density is going to increase.
Well, wait,
But
you live in a condo, Mark. I mean, you
I
live
do.
in
That's the call that a lot of people have to make, right? You want to be by amenities and transit. I couldn't afford a single family home when I bought a house back in, 2000, whatever it was.
Okay. So I think it's a tricky situation. I do. I think that you're balancing, a lot of people's wants and desires with other people's different wants and desires. And I'm not saying that I have the answer. I am saying it's complicated. I mean, they're trying to do something. You got to give them that, right? I mean, it is not inertia. It is not. I remember listening to Sandra Thompson talk about the shift in what they were hoping to do with the credit situation at FHFA, like credit reports and what they were going to allow and not allow. They'd been
Yeah.
working on it for 5 years, 5 years. And this was years ago and nothing
And
ever.
that's like nothing to do with the core issues that we're talking about here is how can we get more houses without fertilizer plants, as Jill James puts in the chat, Yeah, yeah, I agree. We spend too much time on issues that don't really move the ball in a meaningful way.
Yeah, it is something else, I'll tell you. All right. We're gonna
so
talk. Oh, go ahead, Kevin.
I was saying we might want to stick to our title of the show
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
Okay,
I put together a list of scenarios. I think you were about to say the same thing, right?
I was literally about to say we're gonna talk about fraud.
Okay.
So
So
I
I put together this really interesting little list here. It's like 11 different scenarios that I've gotten calls over the years of people wanting to do things. And I want to throw it by you guys and say, what do you guys think? Is it occupancy fraud or not occupancy fraud? Can they do it? Can they not do it? See if,
well, and I went through, that's very interesting that you and I did completely different things, but on the same subject. I went through the accusations at the federal level right now to
Mhm.
dive into what are they being accused of and what are so all right, where do you want
Yeah,
to
so I saw those lists. I kind of came up with my questions from those, but I made it non-political. How's that?
Okay, how about okay, yeah, God, we try so hard not to be political. It's so hard not to be these days. And Mark, let's start with what was the CFPB's definition of occupancy fraud?
It's not the CFPB's occupancy fraud. It's like what's in the mortgage contract, which means you plan to occupy the house within 30 to 60 days of the signing of the note, and you plan to be there for at least a year. It's about intent, and it does allow for change of circumstance. If you get divorced, if a new job came, what they're trying to catch is the person who's deliberately going to put their house on Airbnb the next day,
Yep,
because it's an investor property, which are higher risk
yep.
and therefore have higher rates. So that's what they're trying to prevent. I would argue that this probably fits into the big bucket of not a huge, like, this is not the key issue of our day, but it is definitely fraud. It's wrong. They should definitely pursue it. There's easier to catch now than ever because of the
Mhm.
tools they have on the back end. They can see if you've submitted, multiple applications claiming owner occupancy. But I'm not sure the process we have now, where it's all aired out on X or Twitter, is perhaps the best way to go about it.
So I think it's important to talk about this because loan officers get a lot of mixed messages from reps, from
Yeah.
AEs. We'll call our AE and we'll run the scenario by them and we'll say, this is my situation for my borrower. What do you suggest? Because I mean, all of these situations are so unique and sometimes we're not sure because it just depends, right? So
Yep.
I think we have talked about this on here a number of times. Palantir Technologies is being used by the GSEs and they are able to figure out where you're going to the ATM machine, how far you live from your golf club. They're looking at your magazine subscriptions. They're checking to see, whether or not you are spending the night in a hotel when you go see Aunt Mary. You name it, they are able to track it down. So it is so critically important that we are not only employing this in our own businesses, but getting the word out to the average consumer and LOs. I had a woman come up to me recently, and their brokers are trying to figure out, they're looking backwards and thinking, oh God, what have I done? Right? Is this going to come and bite me in the tail later? Especially when you look at some of the dates on some of the things that people are being accused of. For instance, Texas, okay, okay. So Adam Schiff, there's one. He bought a house in Maryland in 2003 and then bought a condo in Burbank in 2009. So so he's being accused of mortgage fraud and it's hard.
I can't see that's mortgage fraud.
I don't, yeah.
And
Okay, so
interestingly, I've heard boo about that case since then, so I believe they
Yeah.
quietly dropped that one. But yeah,
okay,
Well, how
Leticia
about
James has two accusations, one in Virginia, one in Brooklyn. So and actually when I took a dive into these, I'm like, I don't know. So first of all, the one in 2023 was Virginia. She co-signed for her niece and apparently signed in a power of attorney that somehow said it was going to be her principal residence, but they've provided, supposedly, again, I haven't seen any of this myself, an email that they had sent to the broker being very clear that I am not going to live there. So that one sounds dicey to me. There were issues for her too, though, because if you're the New York Attorney General, you have to have a primary residence in, I don't know, New York. So that was part of what they were trying to nail her on. And then there was another allegation about a property she bought in Brooklyn, and whether it was a 5-unit or a 4-unit. So when she bought it, she did a GSE loan and said it was a 4-unit building. She's only used it as a 4-unit building. But apparently there is some evidence that maybe it's a 5-unit building. She should have done good Lord, a commercial loan. But she says that she has some records that say it's a 4-unit building. And again,
I've had that.
2001.
I've had properties just like that where it's
Yeah, you're not
somewhere along the line it went from a 4 to a 5, and then someone put it back to a 4. Then the client bought it as a 4. The appraiser comes out, they're like, "Oh, that's a 4."
Yep.
But wait a minute, the county's still saying it's 5, and it's like, well, okay, well, which one is it? Well, the appraiser said it was 4. That's what's in the loan. That's what it is.
this goes to your bigger point that these are often complicated situations.
Complicated.
Oh, it's complicated. Like the one on the Airbnbs. Okay, so if you buy a house,
Hang on. We're not done with Leticia.
okay.
Leticia.
So apparently the Department of Justice opened an investigation after her office in New York won a $454 million judgment against our president. So it's all being appealed, but it was interesting to note that the subpoena to go check out her mortgage fraud also covered Trump and the NRA lawsuits. So, okay, but then we have Texas, the Texas Attorney General, who, by the way, is a Republican, but I don't think Bill Pulte is the one who identified him. So he and his wife own 3 owner-occupied houses, 2 of them in Austin. I don't know. Let's do the math on that, shall we? And then we have our Fed Governor, Lisa Cook, and that was my understanding is 2 owner-occupied properties in 30 days. It was picked up by MERS, and there were Airbnb listings on at least one of them, and a relative living in the other one, allegedly. So again, I haven't seen the evidence, but the one thing I like about this subject being very public is that there is such a feeling out there by a lot of our referral partners and by borrowers that you don't have to follow the rules, that you can get away with this. And, people have gotten away with it for years and years and years and years. So if they see it in national headlines, at least they will become aware that this is something that you cannot do, or XYZ will happen. What I don't like is, to Mark's point, I don't like it being tried in the press, and we don't really see the evidence. It's just talked about and to not have the opportunity to defend yourself before you've got big splashy headlines.
Yeah, it's subpar.
Not
It's
cool.
no. So Kevin, you tell us.
Well, I was going to say, so for instance, one of the charges against her was that she bought a house that was then listed on Airbnb shortly thereafter,
The next day.
the next day. And I could see that happening in real life, where you want to buy a second home. The house is currently being put up on Airbnb by the current owner. Okay. They put it up for sale. You say, hey, I want to buy it. Well, if it's an Airbnb, it's already booked out usually for the next 30 days anyway. And you say, well, it's already fully furnished. I'm buying it fully furnished. I'm going to move into it once the Airbnb stop posting. And you could do that.
No, you can't, because you have how many, 30 to
30 days.
60 days, yeah.
Yeah, if you
so
don't, if
60
you're not
days
in
to
there, then you
un-Airbnb it,
now
move into it as your second home.
you know this, or you should know this when you're signing your deed of trust. You are obligated to know what you're signing. So no, you can't do that.
You can't.
Well,
Airbnb
nevertheless, I
the
think it's
house.
fact and like, did she list it on day 60? Like, was it a legacy listing per your point? Was it listed? I mean, if it was listed by Letitia James on day 1 after closing, yes, that's probably a
That could
problem.
be, although
Just so we don't mix up the accusations, Letitia
Sorry, Cook.
not
Sorry,
accused of
Governor
putting
Cook.
on Airbnb.
Yeah.
Yeah. But for her, I mean, she's co-signing for her niece. God, what a nice thing to do. And
okay,
have that
very
bite
nice thing to do. But
tail.
you know what else she could do is if she did an FHA loan. I've done this one where someone has bought a condo near the college where their kids are going to go to. Okay, they're not owner occupying this, but FHA considers that owner occupied because their child is in the residence. I've been told this by several reps, but only FHA that will allow that.
What?
You can buy a house under FHA for a college student
Oh,
in a college town where your son or daughter can live in that said property. You don't live in there, but it's still considered primary residence.
FHA?
Yeah,
I don't
FHA
think
will
so.
do that.
I have a
You can
client.
double check. I was told by a rep. Remember, sometimes reps
Yes. Okay, so
misinform
this
us,
is,
but that's what I was told by a rep.
again, I think that we have to make sure we're double checking things.
Oh,
but-
there we go. Peaches said it's called a kiddo condo purchase. See?
So I tried to do one of these a year ago and I couldn't do it with Fannie Freddie. It was
Oh,
impossible.
yeah, it's not Fannie
You said
Freddie,
it's only
FHA.
FHA.
Yeah,
FHA.
and none of the reps suggested, by the way, FHA.
Well,
I'd love to hear from a rep to see if that is a current thing, because as of, I think it was a year ago, I couldn't do it. So, see, but look, Peaches, she's very seasoned. You are very seasoned. I am very seasoned, and we don't even have consensus on this. That's how complicated all of this is. And
how about this one? I've had it where I was doing a refinance of a 12-unit building. And no, I was refinancing their primary residence. But then they pulled up the rent rolls on the 12-unit building that they owned. And the lender would not give them income, any income, against the 12-unit building because one of the 12 units was rented out by a nephew with the same last name. And therefore, because a family member was in that building, they wouldn't count any of the rent. That made absolutely no sense at all.
it doesn't make any sense. I went 13 rounds with Chase years ago on somebody who had a place, and it was occupied by, like a mom and a sister, but it was showing on the tax returns. Everything was completely legit. I have somebody right now where the sister and nephew live there, and she owns it free and clear, thank God. But when I was trying to figure out, do I do an owner or do I do a second on her primary, or do I try and mess with the rental property? I'm like, forget it. I can't go non-QM because there was a relative living there. And, you know, yeah, it is when you've got somebody at a regulatory agency or at the GSEs, or frankly, I mean, Mark, you know, if we have somebody who doesn't have the phone calls and the scenarios and they're not in the trenches and they don't get it, how freaking complicated this is, and how we really, most of us, I don't know how many, I don't know how to qualify how many of us. I mean, everyone I know. How about that? We're all really trying to do this the right way. We are. But it is not simple, and it is not a one size fits all. And that's why it's so important to let's make sure we're gathering evidence before we take someone down. And also, I don't want to be the LO on those loans. I mean, gosh, you start off thinking, hey, I'm doing the loan for the New York Attorney General. And then you're like, shit, I just did the loan for the New York Attorney General. And now I'm in my, who knows what's going to happen? It's not right. So I think that and by the way, we've got a bunch of people saying they've done the kitty condo, and that is why I went looking for it, people, is I had heard about it too, but I
But
do.
FHA is different than GSE, right? They
Yeah,
don't have, you can't
obviously
do
got,
like
Well,
second homes with FHA and
how
investor
about
properties.
VA? VA
oh,
will let a person go into contract to buy primary residence, and then if that officer, military
Gets
person gets
deployed, yeah.
transferred, deployed during the transaction, they're still allowed to close it as a primary residence, even though they will no longer be living there.
okay, yeah, I would. So we've got a
Little weird things. I mean, there's all these little quirky things to occupancy rules that if you're, seasoned LO, you know it, but it's like, ooh, the press could grab it and run with it and say, oh, look, he bought a house and he's going to be owner occupied, but then he got deployed to, another state or whatever, and he still went ahead with the purchase. Well, in VA, they allow that. Yet other loans don't allow that. And it's like, so now you're screwed because you went in no contingency. And if you hadn't done a VA loan, you're kind of screwed. You just got transferred to another state or town, and what do you do?
Well, obviously, we need to do some work on this kitty condo idea because we've got people all over the place saying, yeah, I've done one. Yes, it exists. And I couldn't find it. So either I did a bad job of figuring out whether I could do something, which is possible, but hard to imagine. Like, anyway, somebody said, how about buying as a second home with an ADU? Kids will live in one unit and then she'll be up every weekend. Is that a legal second home? I mean, uh, you know what I don't want to do right now? Answer that question, because God help us that we tell somebody the wrong thing, right? So you got to read the guidelines, you got to check with your reps. You better deal with reps who know what the hell they're doing. I mean, honestly, now more than ever, you want good reps. And there's a lot of them out there. I mean, a lot of a lot of people who have been in the business for a long, long time and really know their stuff. So yeah, the occupancy, it's not just occupancy, by the way. So Kevin and I have been teaching NMLS continuing ed for years and years and years, and it's always employment and occupancy, employment and occupancy. And I would think it's much easier to, I've never understood how are you committing fraud on employment without forging the crap out of everything, right? I,
Well, I had someone one time, it was a real estate agent trying to buy a property, and he was really, really adamant that it had to close on a particular day. And just was not like budging on it, like, hey, this is really tight. Well, it turned out he was trying to buy two properties on the exact same day.
oh,
So that he would
wow.
do both owner occupied and
Wow.
use his, the one income to qualify for both. Uh,
Wow. Well,
uh,
when people are writing their little LOEs about why there was an inquiry on their credit report,
I was shopping around. That's what he said.
and we're just blowing them off like they're nothing. Uh,
Yeah.
and then, by the way, just it's in the declarations on that 1003. Are you applying for credit for some, like where's the? It's so clear these days, but again, with the way we are doing disclosures, and I keep griping about this, it's click, 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 click. and nobody's reading anything. So even if it's on there, I mean, did they read it? Did they see it? I don't know, because click, 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 click. Mark, I've talked about this. My anal retentive engineer grind over every single penny clients that I've had for decades and decades are click, click, clicking. I'm like, come on, people, I want to review your disclosures with you. And they just it's frustrating. It would
Yeah,
be
no, and
better if
when
we were
I've done the
sitting
signing,
down and signing them manually like we used to, honestly. You want to protect consumers? That's how you do it.
Yeah, I mean, that's always been a problem. And we talked about this with trade, like how do you actually make sure the key information's, and you guys play a key role. The LO is the Jedi who guides you through the process. And just reading this chat, the wealth of knowledge here is just amazing. As everybody on this call knows exactly, like, well, GSEs will allow it if the child is disabled and this and that. I mean, there's a
Yeah.
tremendous expertise that can come to bear here. But I think you hit a key problem. How can you get the customer? This is a big purchase that you only make once every few years. Sometimes I haven't had a mortgage for, new mortgage for 7 years. So you should focus on it. It's a big deal. And I don't know what the answer is. Like, how can we reduce the disclosures or whatever to get it to be a manageable amount so it's not just click, 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 click.
Exactly. It is really important. So again, Lilia is saying Fannie Freddie require you unoccupied within 60 days. So she always tells the real estate agent that rent backs can only be done for 45 days. I tell people they've got it, whenever I've got a 30-day or a 60-day, I'm like, you've got to make sure that they understand really what
that's a problem in San Francisco where the tenant gets 60 days notice by law. So you're not moving in on the 60th day. I can guarantee that. But it's a fine line. Do you take occupancy of it if you get the tenant out?
Well,
And
you
you
can
can't even
certainly,
start.
Kevin, you tell them that the seller has to notice them before we close escrow.
Nope, not in San Francisco. That is considered what's it, wrongful eviction, and the fine for that is excess of $100,000.
Okay, so so that's okay. Here we go with a bunch of people. Oh my God.
Just
I
telling
can't
you,
even
like
comment on
the
that
first
without.
thing I tell clients when they're looking at buying a house as tenants, do not under any circumstances even say hello to those tenants. Do not acknowledge them. Do not say hi. Don't even let them know you're the person absolutely don't let them know you're the one buying the house. And the first conversation has to be from your attorney the day after the close of escrow. Otherwise, get ready to fork out $100,000 plus. I've seen higher than 100,000.
All right, you've got to think of something nice to end on. Rainbows, something. I can't comment on that without expletives, and I've already.
Well, here's a nice comment. I then ask them for if you go ahead and talk to them, make sure you give them my card because they're going to have a nice down payment for their purchase.
No, they have to pay taxes on it, Kevin. The $100,000.
That's true. That is true.
And by the way, that's not even if they, yeah. So, okay, that's not sunshine and rainbows. Let's talk about something nice, which is.
It's September.
It is September.
It is September. I can't believe it's September. I mean, geez, Louise. I had a panic attack when I got the Pete's pop-up saying
also
that
Tuesday.
Pete's coffee has fall color flavors now. And I started getting Christmas decoration emails from Pottery Barn and Williams Sonoma. I'm like, oh my God, crazy. So hopefully everyone had a lovely Labor Day. We have a big week of economic news. Friday will be more than interesting. In the meantime, we are closing loans. We are getting all sorts of funky deals that we couldn't have done 10 years ago done. And we are able to help borrowers we couldn't help before. And we have Mark McArdele looking perplexed. I'm not exactly sure why. Do you have
I'm
any?
reading all the comments, the great comments from your LOs. It's a lot. The Jedi of the mortgage market.
Somebody remembers you with the
I like this one. Kevin is correct. I just saw that great comment.
I know, you should take a screenshot of that and frame it. So have a great week, everyone. There's plenty of loans to do. We have all sorts of options. We just have to go get them. Mark, we love you and thank you for being here
Thank
very
you.
much. Mwah.